Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of the NH Experience. On today's show, I have a very legendary guest on the line. He is a Hall of Famer of the NBA. He's also an NBA champion. He is a 1968 Olympic gold medalist. He is the reason why a lot of these young athletes today are able to go to the NBA away from their college class. We'll get into that and more. They call it the Spencer Haywood rule. We'll get into that. And he has a new book out that we'll definitely get into. He is the one and only, the legend himself, Mr. Spencer Haywood. How are you, sir?
Thank you, sir. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming on. Thank you for taking time out of your schedule. I know you have a lot of things going on these days, especially you being the historian that you are and the legend that you are. When I think about Spencer Haywood, and I know a lot of people don't think about this, but I will say this. You are a game changer. And I mean by that is when you think of the name Jackie Robinson, you automatically think game changer. You think of so many others, countless others that have gone on to change the game. We talk about LeBron James these days as far as how he's changed the business acumen of a lot of NBA players to make them more business minded. Kobe Bryant, obviously, Michael Jordan, so forth and so on. But when I think of you, the history that you bring, the impact that you've had on the game itself, on with the game, away from the game. What does that mean for you, sir, when you hear accolades from some of the younger players and players in general that just pay their respects to you as far as what you've been able to accomplish and what you've been able to do?
Yes, I just think of it as, I am so blessed because to be able to be that one to went all the way to the Supreme Court to change the then 4-year rule. Before I came along, you had to wait for 4 years after your high school class had graduated before you could go into the NBA or to the ABA. And I broke both rules in the ABA, and then I fought the NBA to the Supreme Court, the U.S. Supreme Court, to pave the way for all of the players that we know today and all of the other Hall of Famers that are in the game. With my ruling, you was supposed to sit out for 4 years after your high school class graduated. I sued the NBA for the rights to play after my junior year. And I had one more year left before I could go into the draft with the NBA. And I didn't want to wait because I had played a year in the ABA where I was the MVP, Rookie of the Year, leading scorer, leading rebounder. And let me just remind your audience that I wasn't averaging 10 and 10. I was averaging 30 and 20. So rookie, 19-year-old rookie. And so when I filed suit for the rights to play in the NBA. The NBA filed suit against me to get an injunction that I wouldn't be able to play. And in doing so, I was able to start off my career. But before I started off my career, I filed suit and they filed an injunction for me not to play. And they sent off that injunction. When I got on the floor, got ready to tip the ball, get a tip off, they said, ladies and gentlemen, we have an illegal player on the floor, number 24. And I knew obviously it was me because I was going through all of this media bliss about this guy is going to change the rules of basketball as we know it. And then when they gave me an injunction, I had to sit home for 10 games and wait for my turn to get an injunction. And then I got into 10 game stay of injunctions to play for 10 games. And during those times when I would walk out on the floor, they would say, ladies and gentlemen, we have an illegal player on the floor, number 24. And this game is being played under protest. And so they would protest the game, but I played the 10 games. In the meantime, my case was in the lower courts in Los Angeles. And then my next stay, they had a stay to keep me from playing for 10 games. Then I got another stay to play. Mm-hmm. And at that point in time, we were in the we were in the district courts in California. And the final stage of it was, I was in Cincinnati getting ready to play against Oscar Robertson and the Cincinnati Royals, they got an injunction for me to leave the grounds in which that arena is set on. So they put me out into the snow. And when they put me out into the snow, I got real cold and was freezing. And the police that was guarding me, they put me in their car and let me warm up. And then by that time, my case had worked its way. This is a whole year of basketball of like hate, anger, bottles being thrown on the court. And as you know, they were stating that this player is destroying college basketball as we know it because you're breaking the 4-year rule. And then the NC2A and the ABA and the University of Detroit wrapped themselves up into the NBA lawsuit. And so I had 4 cases going on at the same time. And I'm 20 years old, so I'm like, oh my God, this is so interesting. And then the Players Association for the NBA, which was Oscar Robertson, Jerry West, Wilt Chamberlain, and so on, they were told by the owners that if this young guy break this rule, you're going to be put out of business because all of the young players are going to be coming in from college, from 1 year or 2 year out of college or high school, and then they're going to drive you out. So they didn't stand with me as a union normally would do because I was not a union player. And so it was just hell. It was really hell, but I was acutely, turned out to be the right person at the right time because I was growing up in Mississippi. I seen all hate, I saw all of the other stuff. And we'll back up for a minute before, but let me just take you right on up to the Supreme Court. So we are in the courts, we're hearing my case, and Thurgood Marshall is leading the case. He was not the Chief Justice. I think it was John Berger or someone else, but Thurgood kept talking about the idea that here you have a young Black man trying to make a living, trying to get his mother out of the cotton fields of Mississippi, and you want to stop him, but yet you want him to go to Vietnam War, you want him to go to war at the age of 19 or 18 and fight for a country that won't let him make a living for himself. And then he also made the argument as far as the other revenue sports, the non-revenue sports such as baseball, hockey, and tennis, which is at the university level. Those players don't have to go to college. They don't have to do anything. They just go right in. And also it was a color barrier there because those players were predominantly white and basketball was predominantly Black. So we want you to do the slave labor. You play for 4 years, you make this college coach millions of dollars, the university billions, but you can't get paid nothing. And so he was making all these arguments and stuff, all the oral arguments. And then he said, let's look at the Sherman antitrust law. And under the Sherman antitrust law, you can't stop an American from making a living. And that's where my case fell. And I won the case. And that opened up the doors for all of the NBA players from 1971 until today, which equates in terms of economics, it equates to over $30 billion in player revenue. And by an example, since we talk in LA and you got your nice headphones, the Laker colors, for a guy like LeBron, he made an extra $200 million because he was able not to play the 4 years. And he's making basically $50 million a year. And the same thing for Anthony Davis. He played 1 year, so he's like right under him. So all the players, the salary goes as such. But the ruling itself never was named after me because I was considered to be a revolutionary, in which I'm not. I was at the Supreme Court at the similar time as Muhammad Ali for boxing and Kurt Flood for baseball. And I was a young guy, so They just branded me such. And so I never got my name on the ruling, even though it is from the Supreme Court ruling, it is Haywood v. NBA, Haywood versus the NBA, like Roe versus Wade, Brown versus the Board of Education, etc. And so now we are trying to educate players to know that there's a person who went to war for you. And they starting to understand. LeBron James just did a nice piece on Showtime with me on, it's called not the Shut Up and Dribble series, but it was called The Rule. And that was one of the big steps right now for players to understand that there is such a person. And so the NBA and the NC2A never gave my name, put my name on the ruling. They first call it the hardship rule. And secondly, they call it early entry. And then thirdly, they call it one and done. But it's not either of all of those names. It is the Spencer Haywood rule. Thus, my new book is called the Spencer Haywood rule. And so we're trying to get players such as LeBron, Anthony Davis, and all of the other, Steph Curry and all of them, to just change the name to what it is. It is the Spencer Haywood rule, and Steph Curry is under it. All of the players are under it, but they don't know that there's a person that goes to that. They just think it happened out in space, and it didn't. It was a supreme sacrifice, and I've been ostracized for years. It took me 27 years with all my stats and all my numbers to get into the Hall of Fame. 27 years. It's similar to that of, I'm not likening myself onto Nelson Mandela, but Nelson Mandela stayed out for 27 years before he could get out of prison. So they finally let me get into the Hall of Fame, and there is where players started to take a listen, but they don't listen as well, and they shouldn't make the move now. And so Chris Paul, who is the chairman of the board for the current Players Association, along with I think it's Steph Curry is vice chair, and some of the other guys, Kyrie Irving, all these guys are under my ruling. So it's incumbent upon them during Black History Month and during any month. And they talk about Black Lives Matters and all of that stuff. And that's all fine and well, but you gotta take care of the person who made you a billionaire or a millionaire. And by that, I mean, name the rule for what it is. It is the Spencer Haywood rule. It's incumbent upon Black folks to do this. No one else is going to do it because I fought the system. So, yeah.
No, very well said. I mean, when you think about history, I think you may not consider yourself a revolutionary, but you did a revolutionary thing. And that to me,
and I'm tagged as such.
But you know what? It's apropos because of the impact that it's made. Like you mentioned Muhammad Ali and the impact that made with him going and not going, into the Vietnam War because of his religious beliefs. You talk about Curt Flood, who to me transcends all sports barriers, because without Curt Flood, there's no such thing as free agency. There's no such thing as players, hey man, I want to be traded, man, get me out of here, and actually forcing their way out of a particular city, like we saw James Harden do recently with the Rockets. So when we talk about
one thing about Curt Flood, do you know that Curt Flood, after he won his case, they wouldn't give it to him. They gave it to Andy Musclesmith, took his name off it, like they took my name off of my rule and gave it to Larry Bird. And and Curt Flood had to go, he left the country, stayed on the islands for 30 years, and he came back to this country to die, and they still didn't recognize him. They took him around to baseball, and baseball players were like, who's this old guy, man? What is he doing around here? Get that out of here.
And that's the sad part, because do you feel like, I know you mentioned earlier about guys like Oscar Robertson and Jerry West and the owners kind of putting a fear factor into them, saying, hey, you look behind your shoulder, your job's not going to be here. Did they stand behind you at any point or show any kind of support while you were going through this situation?
No. I was an enemy of the state.
Okay.
That meant that, this guy is coming to take our jobs, and he's going to bring a whole bunch of young other Blacks to take our jobs and push us out. And so finally, when I won the case, and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who was Lou Alcindor at the time, he said, hey man, I want to play against him, and I'm not going downstairs into the locker room, which all of the teams used to take their their whole team and take them down into the locker room, leave me upstairs with my team, and people would throw bottles and act crazy and do all of the crazy stuff. But Kareem didn't do it when we got to Milwaukee. And he said, hey, I think what he did is admirable. And so that's when all of the players, and then that following year, the Players Association allowed me to be a member of the union. And that's when it all changed. And they realized that it was going to enhance basketball as we know it. And Jerry and Oscar and all of them took me in, Wilt took me in, and until we got to the All-Star game in LA in '72, I was going to break out my new Nikes because it's a prototype Nike shoe. And so I come in with my Nikes on, and Wilt, and we was on the same team, Wilt Chamberlain, Jerry West, Oscar Robertson, Connie Hawkins. I was the starter, and on the bench was Kareem and the other guy. So I come in with these new Nikes on. They were like, you can't wear that stuff in here. This is the NBA, man. What are you doing? So they pulled my Nikes off, and I had to end up wearing some Adidas, I think it was, on the court, and played in the All-Star game. And then after the game, they were sitting over there counting the money up saying, yep, we got another one. Them rookies coming in here in the NBA, we're going to keep them changing those shoes out on them, and they're going to make us rich. But just, saying welcome to the league is what it was.
A little bit of hazing.
Yeah, a little bit of hazing. That's the word.
Okay, all right.
So that was beautiful. That's when I was accepted by the hierarchy of the NBA.
Outstanding. You have always been a part of history. You were part of the 1968 Olympics. Tommy Smith and John Carlos made that famous pose with the black fist in the air, and subsequently pretty much blackballed them for a very long period of time.
Until today.
Yeah. And you were there. Were you around at that point where they were stepping on stage?
Yeah, we were all, see, we lived in the village, the Olympic Village.
Okay.
Our compound was this, and it was for the men. We had boxing, track and field, basketball, etc. So we were living in the same dorm. And so when we got down to the Olympics, there was this movement about, because Kareem had boycotted the '68 Olympics, and he said, I'm not going to play. Wes Unseld and Elvin Hayes signed their pro contract, which stipulated that if you sign a pro contract, then you're not eligible to play in an amateur game sport. So they left themselves out. And then when I got to the trials, we had the trials for the Olympic team. We had all of the players, college players from all over the country, and they tried out, let this freshman try out, because they never let a freshman try out before, which is me. And when they came to the selection committee, they cut Pistol Pete Maravich, averaging 44 points a game. He got cut. Rick Mount was averaging 39 from Purdue. He got cut. Calvin Murphy was averaging 33. He got cut. Tom Bowinkle got cut. That played with the Bulls later on. Dan Issel got cut. I mean, it was a wild cutting experience there. And so they picked me to lead the team. And I was like, hey, man, I'm just 19. What am I going to do? And so we get down here to the Olympic Village, and there's all this talk about, track and field. Tommy Smith, John Carlos, Lee Evans, and Bob Beamon. That was the hot dogs of the Olympics. They were like the shots, man. They coming in from San Jose State. Dr. Harry Edwards was, behind them, had them pumped up. So we came in there like some unknowns because we were the basketball team. And lo and behold, when we had the big conference to find out if anybody was going to make any mistakes or do anything that was against American Olympic rules,
right,
we had Jesse Orange speak to us, and man, he came in and he spoke to us, and we were like, sort of like, man, this old Uncle Tom dude, man, what is he talking about? And Jesse looked at us and looked at Tommy and John and said, what would you have done if you had to run before Hitler? And we were like, oh, he didn't. He put the H-man on us. And so everybody was like, lacing them up, baby. We gotta get to it now. And so when we got to all of our events, and we was out running throughout the Olympics, and we got to the finals, and we had a day off, and Tommy and John was running for the Olympic finals, and when they finished, they put on the glove and took a stand because they said, hey, man, we're going to let the brothers back home know that we came to the Olympics in '68, but we won gold and silver, I think it was, or bronze. And we just want to let black folks know that we cool. You know, this is a good thing. Man, here come the commissioner of the Olympics and Avery Brundage and all of those people. They came in and you get them out of here, march them out of here. They can't stay in the dorm. They won't be here for closing ceremonies, and marched them out. And then they brought us in again, saying, if any of you want to protest, get out too now. You know, we won't even get a chance to win a gold medal. So we were like, whoa. And George Foreman looked at me and I was looking at George. I'm like, I guess we got to go do it. And so George came up with his fight and he knocked out the Russian and he put his flag up, the American flag, like, hey. And so when I got around to my games, and then I set all of these records as the most points in history Olympic games, and also the field goal percentage at 72 and the most rebound. And so when they put that gold medal on me, I was like melting down because I couldn't believe that I had went through all of this stuff. And 4 years prior to, I was from a little town in Silver City, Mississippi, strictly cotton, picking cotton as an indentured slave. And here I am now with this gold medal on my neck and the American flag, the American national anthem is playing and all of this beautiful stuff. And I was just saying to myself, and I said to JoJo White, man, isn't America great? And he was like, because he's a former soldier and he played with University of Kansas. He was like, it's the greatest country in the world. So we were like celebrating that. And that was the Olympics. And then we heard when they got back to California, John and Tommy Smith and John Carlos got back to California, people was ostracizing them and saying that you traitors, you're un-American. And they went to the Olympics. They won for this country. And so they was ostracized for years. And I talk with them and we do some events together because this is our 50th anniversary coming up. But I talk to John Carlos because that's my man. We talk a lot. And I mean, do you know that those guys have to go around making speeches and stuff, and people are using their brand, that salute. People got them on shirts. They got them on all kinds of brands. They've been using their brands for 50 years. They haven't received a dime. So I often wonder, what are we doing as Black people that we allow Martin Luther King, his family was, when he made the sacrifice, to be, you know, like struggling to survive. Same thing with Malcolm X, with his family surviving. It's just, and you know, like with me not getting recognition for what I've done for them. What is wrong with us? Why are we so draggy sometimes? And now I look at hockey. Hockey, they gratify those players who took a stand and did something. And so I look at myself and say, wow, all I'm asking for is a name change on a rule that this is the Supreme Court rule.
Right, that you had to do.
You guys. And I'm saying all of the players out of the 500 players that's playing, 490 of them are under my rule.
And that's the key. I mean, you look at the NHL, how they're finally honoring Willie O'Ree. I know it's a lot more. They're doing that. And then recently, history was also made with the LA Kings selecting Quentin Byfield, who was the first, Black player selected at number 2 in NHL draft history, which is, to me, is remarkable. And when you see things like that, and when you're a part of history as you were, you talk about the Kurt Floods, you talk about the Muhammad Alis of the world. What do you see in today's athlete, specifically a guy like Colin Kaepernick?
Yeah, I like his stand. I just wish he had played, came back and got an opportunity to play under the right circumstances. I'm an old schooler, so I would have sucked it up, and when they said, come on back and just play. but he had his reason, and this is his white world. I admire him so much for taking that stand, and look like everybody is trying to make a stand. And I look at LeBron James as my next hero with this journey. He is always taking a stand, and sometimes I tell him, don't fight so hard for me, because you got all of the other country, you got the whole country on your back, man. So be cool. And so maybe I shouldn't tell him that, because he ended up saying, nah, man, I'm doing this 6-minute piece on you, and you don't like it, you can just know where to go. So he did a wonderful story on me on Showtime. I look at Kyrie Irving and all of the players that are doing some taking a stand. I think all of the NBA players are in cohesiveness with the commissioner. Commissioner is different today than it was back in those days. I mean, you can be a part of something, you can be that person. So they allowing these players to be men that they are, and they are like also the corporate leaders in their business. Whereas when we played, we didn't have ownership like they do. They have like 50% ownership of their brand, their company, of the NBA. So it's a different world. And I'm just so proud of them, because not only that, Bill, I'm proud of them because, for one, we lost Kobe, and then the Lakers go out and win the championship. That was like so powerful. And they won it in a pandemic, where
Right.
they're putting their life on the line. All these players, NBA players, is not recognized for what they're doing. They're putting it on the line. This is life and death. This is not like just basketball here. And they're playing on the bubble. They getting tested every day, and if they get it, they gotta sit out for a minute. It's just it's a great time in America to see what's going on. A young man like yourself on the TV and radio. It's like I'm bubbling over, because I just, I'm an old country boy. So I was thinking, is it going to ever happen? And I look at the future, what you guys are doing, and I just say, wow, we have a great future ahead of us.
Well, it was because of people like yourself, people like we've mentioned earlier in this show, that paved the way, that took a stand, that had the courage and the mental strength and stability to be able to take that stand. So we applaud you, sir. We applaud all the names that have been mentioned. You mentioned also Kobe Bryant, who was tragically lost last year. What did Kobe Bryant mean to you? What did you see in that young man? And did you ever get a chance to meet or talk with him at any point?
Oh yeah, I met with Kobe many times. I played against his dad, so
Right, Jelly
yeah,
Bean.
so it's pretty cool, And then I met him when he first got drafted. I was out in LA, so we talked a little bit. But just before he died, Kobe invited me down to his Kobe studio out there in what's the place?
Costa Mesa.
Yeah, and so we were talking because he wanted to do my life story, and he had to get the other two stuff out of the way before he did it, But that's what we were discussing, because he appreciated me so greatly for what I had did for basketball, but what I had did for him. And so it was that kind of experience. So he was special. He was a special man, special person. And we have something in common. We have 4 daughters. I have 4. So, we were we're like girl power. So I love Kobe. And to this day, I have my LeBronies. I have my bronze 18, my shoes. I'm a gym shoe guy. So I have my bronze. But I got all of Kobe's last batch of shoes. I have all of those because I was Nike's first player in the history of Nike.
So this was before Michael Jordan.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. So I didn't have a sharp agent. So when they asked for me the stock in the company, my agent couldn't figure out how to get his percentage out of it. So he sold my stock. So now I'm like less 1.8 billion or something.
And that's the one thing I want to ask you, with all of the things that were thrusted upon you negatively, as far as treating you like an outcast, treating you like you were the like you said, the enemy of the state. How did you not muster up that negativity and allow that to dictate your decisions moving forward? How did you stay? I'm hesitant to say a positive state because it's hard to be positive in those situations. But how did you have a balanced mind state and not be bitter or not be angry?
Well, I had a lot to be bitter for, not just the sports, and because I was born in Silver City, Mississippi, and it ain't no silver and it ain't no city. It's a population of 275 people, and I was born in a cotton field. We were sharecroppers, indentured slavery. So I
Mhm.
went through that whole process as a growing up kid. And then we moved to Michigan, to Detroit, where I expanded more and more in high school and so on and in college. And then when I fought to my case all the way to the Supreme Court, and then to be ostracized when I was going to be the MVP of the league. They took it out of my hand. One other time I was with, we had an all-star game in Seattle with this, it was at the Sonics game, and I was with the Sonics. I'll score, I'll rebound everybody. I'm walking in to get my trophy as MVP, and they said, no, we're giving it to Bob Lanier. So I have all of this pain. I had so much pain being thrust down on me. And one of the nice things about being married to the model at the time, Iman, is she introduced me to a psychologist, because I had all of this pain. And I was like, what you talking about, sister? Black people in America don't do that, because she's from Somalia,
Right.
What are you talking about, girl? Get out of here with that. So I went in and started seeing a psychiatrist, and my life changed because I got a chance to push all of that stuff out. And then my mother was, and my family, we were brought up in the Bible of like, the Lord put you in the right place at the right time. You have to carry out the Lord's will and not your own. So I lived through that whole process. And then when I was married to Imam, we were Muslims. So I have some spiritual base, but I would say mental health is the cornerstone. And what I'm doing today with my Spencer Haywood Foundation is we are addressing a number of issues, but mental health is one of our strong pillars.
Absolutely. I think mental health, especially in our communities and in other minority communities as well, is definitely vital, especially going through this pandemic, going through even before the pandemic, just us growing. I know me growing up in LA, growing up in, LA, Inglewood area, South Central, just dealing with the racial injustice on a daily basis, systemically as well as institutionalized racism.
Yeah.
I don't think people really realize that we have PTSD just because we didn't go off to a war. We have PTSD, right?
Yeah,
Right.
unbelievable,
Yeah.
man. And that's one thing. And we've lived it for what, 250 years in America. I mean, we're talking about slavery, chained down, and
Plus, yeah.
busting, people beating us on our head, and like destroying our whole family structure, taking your name away, your culture, everything. You can't even say, hey man, I was enslaved. No,
Right.
what are you doing? You're complaining. What is wrong with you? Don't you see how
Yeah.
good we are to you? We let you pick the cotton.
We let you vote.
We let you vote. Sometime now it was having the guy trying to take it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, that's one of the things that I just encourage that. And the other thing that I encourage is that our physical health need to be taken care of a lot more better than we normally do. As far as men are concerned, we need to get our PSA checks. We need to make sure our prostate cancer is not rising, because it is taken out. And I'm a survivor of prostate cancer, so it's taken out a lot of our men. We have COVID, who's taken out so many of our people. I mean, it doubled the amount of everyone else. And I have been, I'm a survivor of COVID. I just got through my 60th day of surviving. And one thing, I was laying in that bed, I was like, my heart was beating all crazy and I'm feeling all sick. And I'm thinking, am I gonna make it? And the one thing that bugged me the most was that, man, if I can get out of this and survive. And I was so angry at the players in the NBA, because I was like, I done lived through all of this stuff and I'm gonna die like this. And y'all won't ever know what stand I took. And they walk across that stage in the NFL and in the NBA. They walk across that stage as a player under the Spencer Haywood rule, and you don't even know who I am.
Yeah.
That was one of the painful things that I went through there. And
Well,
I just got a vaccine. So I
okay.
haven't had my second shot because I'm over 70. So
No, you know what? I'm thankful that you made it. You survived. You have a lot more living to do, a lot more work to do,
yeah.
apparently. And lastly, before I let you go, I definitely want to talk about your book. Um, why should people read it? What should people look for in it? And what impact you want to leave upon people after reading it?
Well, it tells you it's an up story. It's not a down story. It's an up story, a story of survival in rural south of Mississippi, in Mississippi, Silver City, Mississippi, and moving to Detroit, uh, where families, the Temptations, all of the great artists of Detroit area, they took me in and they made sure I never got in any trouble. They nurtured me, and I was the boy from Silver City, but I'm Detroit, so it covers that whole era of like race riots and just all of the burning down of Detroit, what it was like with the music scene, Motown. We go into the Motown Review, catching all of the great artists, and then also the jazz side of it in Detroit and the jazz in Seattle and so on and so forth. And then it has a beautiful story of Iman and I as we brought her family in from Somalia into New York to live with us and live through all of the turmoil that we went through. And then also a story of like when I was there with the Lakers, I fell into the addiction of drug abuse with cocaine. I survived it all and came through it all by the grace of God. Uh, it's just this wonderful story that every time you think that I'm down and out and I'm out of it, it's like the Lord lifts me back up, because there's something in store. Greatness keep popping up in me, and it keeps me young. It keeps me energetic. It keeps me out here, and telling the story in this book. This book is like a tremendous book. It has nice photos of all of our history, my history coming up through. My current wife with Linda, we've been married now for 29 years. Of course, we have 4 daughters. I have 3 by her, and then my oldest daughter is by Iman. So and Zuleika is working with Iman Inc. She's doing real well, my oldest daughter. And like I said, Courtney, my next one, she's at an historical Black college. She's a professor at Lincoln University. And
Nice.
Shakira is a doctor. She's seeing patients in New York. She's a psychologist because dealing with me all of her life, so she
Right.
decided to go to that area. And my youngest daughter, Isis, she was just at Slam magazine and Bleacher Report for years, and she's taking a break because of just burnout. And I have 3 grandchildren. I have 2 grandsons and 1 granddaughter, and all my family is doing well. My brothers and sisters, there's nothing has befallen upon them. That's covered in the book, and it's just a wonderful life, and it tells you that you can never be down if you have a higher power in your life. And if you believe in yourself and believe in the people that you're surrounded, and always uplift somebody else, because with your hands open, you're able to give and also to receive. And that's what a receiving part of giving is when you're able to get health and wealth and I'm not talking about wealth in terms of money, but just health, wealth, and spirit and your joy. So that's what this book is about. It's like really a special book. And the people who've read it, they have like, I've had so many good reports. And it's written by the great Mark Spears of ESPN Undefeated and Gary Washburn at the Boston Globe. And this is all sports. The contract that with the book was helped provided by the late Commissioner David Stern, who was writing the foreword in the book. And so the NBA Commissioner Adam Silver and all of his staff and people have helped with this. Now we also have the other staff of the NBA PA, which is the Players Association, Michelle Roberts, Crystal Chin, Sherry Dean, all of these people are involved in this whole project of it's a project of hope and unity and joy. And keep your head straight. Try to be as clean as you possibly can. And don't hang out with Matt Burns. No, I'm just joking. You know, Matt Burns. He burns.
Oh yeah, I love Matt Barnes, man.
I love Matt. That's my boy. Come on. You know, I'm just kidding.
Oh yeah, I know.
Man.
Yeah, Matt Barnes is a good guy. Him and Steven Jackson both. I'm so elated on their success, man.
So I say that because I'm like, you know, those are my favorite. That's my favorite show.
Oh yeah, all the smoke.
Those are my favorite guys. So I'm like, you know, always like, boy, I wish I could have been like you boys.
Yeah, right. Exactly, man. Definitely trailblazers for certain. The name of the book, for those that still haven't had a chance to read it, is called The Spencer Haywood Rule: Battles, Basketball, and the Making of an American Iconoclast.
Yeah.
Excellent read. I definitely want to dive more into it. You know, I think this should be on the schools list as far as books for schools. I really do.
I did a piece with Chris Webber. You know, he's a professor down at Morehouse this year. And I just did one for his class and him and his podcast. So this is a new thing. And I did one for Wake Forest, Chris Paul's old school.
Okay.
So, and you know, we were talking earlier before we got on air that Allen Houston just hit me up and said, well, you got to make a presentation for the Knicks and their players, because what is happening, the players are starting to say, hey, let me have him come in on Zoom and speak to our team and stuff like that, so we can know who we are, who he is and stuff. So
absolutely, man.
It's just a blessing. And God is so awesome, man. It's just so awesome to me and my family and to this country. We just got to get ourselves together and play in the team of life right now, because you can't say, well, you know, we're in a pandemic, but we're white and you're black. No, this one here is making you come together. Because if you don't come together and take your vaccine and work together and be spiritually caring, this thing will crumble. As we saw on January 6th, this could easily crumble.
Oh, for sure. I definitely have to invite you back again, because there's so many more things that I want to talk to you about.
Talk about no basketball, man.
I know. Well, you know what? This is why I said I got to bring you back on the show again. I know you're, like I said, you're a very busy man, and I do appreciate you being so good. Thank you. You're so gracious with your time. From day one that I met you, you know, when we were on a radio program together. Yeah. You know, with Andre Russell of KJLH, who brought us together, we were able to meet. So I definitely want to bring you back on the show at some point and really get into some basketball, get into more in your life as well, and your impact, not just on the game, but your impact in life, period, because I think it's a remarkable story. And you're still here to tell your story. That's the important part.
Because, you know, Muhammad Ali is no longer here. Kurt Flood is no longer here. I'm the last man standing.
Yeah. And standing strong.
Standing strong.
Yes, indeed.
Bernie Spear, I stand strong in Babylon.
There you go. There you go. Well, please give my love to the family. Give my love to your lovely wife, Linda. And thank you so much, sir, for all your time, all your efforts, everything that you've done for us, not just as a people, but as a society. Thank you so much. It is an honor and it is a privilege. The one and only Spencer Haywood. Please let everyone know where they can follow you on social media as well.
They can follow me on Instagram, Spencer Haywood 24. Same as well on Twitter, as well on Facebook. And you can go to my website. It's the SpencerHaywoodRule.com. You can find out more about me and more about the foundation, what we are doing. And again, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, sir. It's been a pleasure. We will talk to you soon.
Thank you, sir.
Ron, you've always been a person of history, and Spencer Haywood has been the person that you've spoken with and really tried to bring to the forefront. Why is his legacy so important, especially trying to get the naming of a rule changed?
I just think it's very important to highlight and acknowledge people who've laid down the groundwork for us to be in the position that we are today. And I think Spencer Haywood is one of those guys, along with Kareem, along with you know, the Big O, along with Bill Russell, along with so many others that played in that era, that just laid a lot of the groundwork both on the floor and also off the floor as well, in order for me to sit here and play the game that I love to play. So as much as I fell in love with guys that played the game, I also fell in love with the stories that was behind the game. Some of the hardships they had to go through in order to be in the positions they were. So he's one of those guys, and it's just all about respecting the journey, respecting the people that came before you, and that's I've always been that way though. That's just who I am.